have a code.
Good evening, TYT Army, and welcome to TYT Community. I have with me the brilliant Daniel Aviles and the wonderful and lovely Rhiannon Aveneen. Today we're going to talk about a couple of videos, one including Robert Reich, and the next we're going to poke a little bit of fun at Marco Rubio and his epic water break. But first we want to get into to poverty. So as you know, President Obama introduced a way to, or a plan to increase the minimum wage. Rhi, why don't you take it from here?
Yes, as probably most of you know by now, President Obama in his State of the Union address pronounced that he has every intention of getting the minimum wage raised to $9 an hour, which is much higher than it is in most of the states. In most of the states, 31 states right now, the federal minimum wage is at $7.25 an hour, which amounts to, if you work 40 hours a week every week without vacation time, without sick days, the maximum that you can earn is $15,000 a year, and that's before you payroll taxes. And of course, that is not a living wage, that's a poverty wage. So $9 an hour would not bring most people out of poverty that are in poverty right now, but it would certainly help, and it's a starting point. And he also proposed indexing that rate so that it keeps up with inflation and rises automatically after that. So we could see a rise in minimum wage up to and exceeding $9.80 an hour before 2014. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, and let's talk about, maybe we can talk about the benefits of raising minimum wage, because there's a lot of rumors going around that it's just going to cause more harm than it is good.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Well, first I want to say that it's a start, but it's not nearly enough. I mean, yeah, you know, people are going to be like, oh, you guys are just, you know, you libs are out trying to destroy business, and you guys are selfish. You want more and more and more. But
right.
There's a chart out there, and if you've seen this, Think Progress has a great chart that showed that, you know, on minimum wage as it is right now, how many hours one would have to work to be able to afford a two-bedroom apartment. And
right.
as you can see, most of them right now is like 70 hours, 44 hours. It's a great chart by Think Progress. So you wanted to say something, Rhi?
Yeah, in no state in the country is it possible to live off of minimum wage, even when the state minimum wage is actually higher than the federal minimum wage. The highest minimum wage in the country right now is $9.13 an hour, and that's in Washington State.
Washington's kind of got their shit together. I mean, you know, they got the highest minimum wage, and then they get the smoked pot.
Yeah, they legalized marijuana. I believe they've improved their school system very much over the last few years as well.
Well, that's great, and of course it's the opposite of what we're doing in most parts of the country, especially the South right now. Sorry to beat up on you people from the South.
I used to live in Washington State, and they actually gone through great lengths to improve their environmental quality over there, including reducing logging by a decent amount.
Right?
That's progress for you.
Starting to make Washington State look a lot more appealing. And it's also fair to note that tipped employees usually get paid only $2.13 an hour. That's the federal minimum wage for tipped employees that make more than $30 a month in tips. So, and that hasn't changed in 20 years.
That's amazing. You know, I never thought that the people who served our food.
That is different in the state of California, that's for certain, and Washington. Yeah. They're not allowed to have that. They cannot include tips into the minimum wage standard. They have to legally pay them the $8 and X amount of cents an hour. They cannot include their tips in the minimum wage in the state of California and in Oregon and in Washington. That's very popular in central United States and the South, but not in the Northeast. I lived in most of those states, so.
So you have a pretty good, you have a pretty unique perspective. You've been everywhere.
Yeah. Right.
I've been everywhere. Yeah.
And if minimum wage had risen at the same rate as economic inflation, then we'd be making $10.58 an hour right now. If it had stayed at the same rate that corporate profits have gone up, which have skyrocketed over the last 20 years, then we'd be making about $23 an hour.
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to ask everybody a question here. Have you guys worked a minimum wage job?
Yes.
I guess I would say so. Yes, briefly.
Okay. So we've all worked minimum wage jobs. We know how little it is and how hard it is to actually do something on that wage. So I think it's great that we're actually going to attempt to do something about it. I don't know. Is he actually going to take an executive action trying to do this, or does he have to try and get it through Congress?
He did make an allusion that he was intending to use executive privilege if Congress wasn't willing to cooperate with him. But I don't know if he's actually given that authority or not.
Yeah, that's definitely something we have to look into.
I think he should make the minimum wage a noose and wrap it around the Republican Party's neck with it, to be honest with you.
I think that'd be excellent, an excellent tactic, especially politically. Oh, you're gonna deny these people a raise so that they can actually try to stand on their own?
I mean,
Republicans?
A good example of that is how wages not calculated inflation is. My mother back in the early 80s was making, at that point in time, at least $18 an hour. That was the minimum wage for that job in just retail sale. Now that is what? $8 an hour? You're talking about almost half. It's just they have not kept up with inflation. And people will make an argument. There's two arguments to be made on this. Is that when people talk about it will make things worse for the economy, is it's not that the American worker is substandard. It is the fact that the American worker requires more income than you do in these third world countries. It's not that the American worker is second best. You're not raising people out of the working class. What you're doing is eliminating the working poor is what the goal is. You got to have a standard on the bottom that meets a standard of living, not a slave wage.
Right.
Not only that, but like it also reduces the need for government services, social services that Republicans are against. I mean, it only makes sense. Like if you want to get rid of food stamps, okay, we can do that, but you have to raise the minimum wage up to a living standard wage, or else no deal.
Well, and why would they want to make that deal? I mean, corporations are ruling the Republican Party right now. Why would corporations?
Yeah.
Well, right now we're talking about corporations rule the Republican Party right now. Why would they want to take the expense upon themselves when they could continue to let the taxpayers through welfare services and food stamps pay for these people? That, rather than paying them a living wage, they just have taxpayers deal with it.
It's an ideology. It's a supply side based economics as opposed to a demand. You think out of sheer greed, the common sense from a rather social Darwinistic perspective is to say, okay, instead of raising the minimum wage, we can hire more people at a lower wage, and we could get more people employed, but there still is not enough to basically put food on the table. It's still not a living wage.
Well, that sort of leads to another myth going around, which is if you raise the minimum wage, then corporations and businesses are just going to fire people and cut back hours in order to make up for the cost. But that would be counterintuitive, because they need to have as many employees and as many workers as necessary to keep up with demand. And they're not going to have any more workers than they need to keep up with demand. They're not going to hire people when they get tax breaks. And they're not going to fire people when they're forced to pay their workers a living wage.
Corporations are sitting on mountains of cash right now. Do you think they need another tax cut? Oh, hell no. Hell no, they don't need another tax cut.
Corporations are richer than they've ever been in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Now, what is it? The wealthiest 400 people in this country have enough wealth to eliminate poverty worldwide 4 times over.
The top 400 people, if I'm correct, the top 0.2% of the economy in the United States, the top 2% of earners own 150 million of the out of 312, it's roughly about half of the U.S.'s overall wealth.
Now, this brings me to an important point. Welfare queens. Who are the biggest welfare queens in the United States? Well, one of them is ExxonMobil, and the other one is Walmart. And Walmart gets by paying its by paying its workers the minimum wage, and then telling them, "Hey, well, it's okay. We're going to pay you minimum wage, but we're going to tell you how to get on food stamps and government assistance." While Walmart receives millions in tax breaks, and we're essentially subsidizing Walmart.
Right. Oh, yeah. Not only that, not only do they get the tax breaks for these people, but they don't. They save money by not having to pay them a higher wage, and they pass on that cost to the taxpayer. So most of those employees are likely also buying that food with those food stamps from Walmart,
the company store.
It's very much okay. You guys remember back in the day, the coal mining industry would have their own set currency in their own set store, and they would only pay you in their set currency. That's why people used to say, "I owe my life to the company store."
Yeah.
As far as what the top bracket is doing is they're passing the buck amongst one another. Is a good example. An institution like Walmart can avoid paying set taxes, meaning that the truth is, yes, the wealthy do pay the majority of the current taxes because there's not enough revenue and not enough money in the middle class and the working class's pocket to do so. And what it's doing is this roughly about the top 20% of the country is paying for the subsidization of everyone to a set extent because the large corporations are creating the pitfall for it. The top freaking 2% are the ones creating the pitfall for it, and roughly about the top 15% are picking up their tab if you look at the overall taxation. Now, what they need to do is prevent these large corporations from creating this slave wage state where if there's not enough money in people's pockets, there's not enough money for them to spend for goods and or services in the marketplace. This is what happens when you have unregulated, laissez-faire, free market capitalism without regulation. It doesn't prevent the large animals basically from killing off all the competition, and you got 4 or 5 guys on the top running mostly everything.
Well, that gives me to another point, is that there is no such thing as a free market. Free market, what we think of a free market, what we're thinking of now, always leads to a corporate monopoly. Because the bigger companies are going to want to, and we've seen this with the banks. The banks continue to eat the smaller banks through acquisitions. You know, I don't know.
You can see it. You can see it with Walmart as well. If you go any small town that receives a Walmart destroys every business in its path.
Right, and not only that, but they get tax subsidies to boot for the next 7 years, I believe. They get tax subsidies from that town to do business, and then they create those low-wage jobs, and of course it destroys all the other mom-and-pop shops in the area because their prices can't compete, and you have all these low-wage workers that, well, they're like, well, I can't afford food at the other store, so I'm going to buy it at Walmart that has, you know, that charges, $1.25 for a loaf of bread, as opposed to $2 for a loaf of bread at the other store.
Yeah, if you raise people's salaries to a living wage, all you're going to do is stimulate the economy because those workers become consumers as soon as they clock out of work. If people can afford to buy more products, then you're bringing wealth into the economy. You're enriching people's lives. Studies have shown that raising people's wages only raises the cost of products overall by 0.04%.
And that's as opposed to giving rich people more money in the form of tax breaks. They already have most of everything that they want. what are they going to do with the extra money? They're going to keep it, or they're going to invest it in their own, I guess, in their business, or they're going to invest in the stock market, or the banks, which are doing a casino gambling game right now. I mean, that's what the banks are doing with all their money. They're not giving out loans anymore. They're taking their profits and they're investing it into that Wall Street casino slot machine that crashed our economy back in 2008. This is a disaster waiting to happen.
The basic fundamentalism of capitalism is that you have supply and demand. Right now, how it's set up is they're building a surplus of supply for which there are no demand, and we are recouping their costs via grants and surplus and subsidies, shall I say. That is. Have anybody ever read the book Free Money?
No.
Okay, in that book, it describes, based on a tier-based system, based on the income and the nature of the corporation, grants that are available to you from the federal government to hire people that are either disabled, of set ethnicity, and how you can outsource your work overseas and collect a tax break.
And
this is like,
I'm sorry. That just like boggles my mind, right? Like, it pisses me off so much to see that, and you know this in the fiscal cliff deal. I broke it down in the fiscal cliff deal that we gave another tax break, especially for companies, for banks that send their jobs overseas. We're subsidizing them sending our jobs to China. What the fuck are we doing?
Everybody out there, do America a favor in the basic run-of-the-mill retail sector. Don't use the self-checkout machines ever, because that is your neighbor's job. That's your friend's job. That could be your fucking future job. That can be your child's job.
Very good point.
They're trying to eliminate you as much as possible. So
yeah. So I mean,
another thing is Walmart. The other one. Don't shop at Walmart for produce or dairy. Studies have shown if you walk into Walmart, it's all done based on convenience. The milk costs more at Walmart than your basic run-of-the-mill grocery store, even the major ones, Publix, Safeway, even Albertsons, which is Mormon-owned. Basically, they will charge you more for fruits and vegetables and dairy because they figure they already have you in the store. Go and compare yourselves.
All right.
Okay.
I mean,
final point.
Create fucking revenues. Stick a dynamite up this economy's ass and light it. Build some infrastructure. Put people to work. I mean, can we learn from FDR and World War II?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. 100%. I agree with this guy.
Me too. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. There you have it. We need to raise the minimum wage. We need to accept this $9 an hour raise. We need to index that rate so that it keeps up with inflation from this point forward. And $9 needs to be a starting point, not an ending point. Poverty is something that is manufactured. There's no excuse for it, and it's time for it to end.
Well said.
Well said. All right. Thank you for watching this clip of TYT Community. If you want to join in the conversation, just email us at tytcommunityshow@gmail.com and subscribe to us, and also subscribe to the Young Turks and TYT Nation. Thank you.